So I have the pleasure of facilitating the next panel, which is about the projects that will shape our cities and grow our economy. So I would like to welcome our panellists to the stage. Roch, Managing Director of Sydney Water, Ken Morrison, CEO of the Bradfield Development Authority, Josh Murray, Secretary of Transport for New South Wales, and Nguyen, Executive Director, Precinct Development, New South Wales Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure. Raise the roof. It's a long walk, Roch. All right, we're going to have some fun, and I'm going to try to be quite positive in this panel, so please feel free to cut sick and go feral on the Slido questions and ask the really hard ones. I have to maintain these relationships, but you guys can stay anonymous, so just take all liberties. I want to start with scale. So Ken, as CEO of the Bradfield Development Authority, you're responsible for delivering Australia's newest city, the Bradfield City Centre, and Bradfield sits within the 11,000 hectare Aerotropolis precinct. So that's about the size of Darwin. On the other end of the spectrum, you're responsible for 42 hectares of urban renewal project in North Parramatta, and that's about the size of the Vatican City. Look, if I was cheeky, which I'm not, and if I was unprofessional, which I'm not, I'm sure there'd be something about size matters, does size matter, or is it kind of, along that chain? But because I'm very professional, I'll start with you specifically, Ken. 11,000 hectares is really big. How can you ensure that the $20 billion pipeline of infrastructure investment will actually generate employment, housing, lifestyle opportunities for Greater Western Sydney? And who's footing the rest of the bill?
Thanks, Faith. G'day, everybody. It is big. 11,000 hectares is very, very big. If you overlay the Western Sydney Aerotropolis on the CBD, you go from the harbour all the way to Botany and from Bondi all the way to the inner west. Just think about that as a new development opportunity, a new economic opportunity for Sydney. It is enormous. We are getting a new 24/7 international airport, and at Bradfield we're creating Australia's first city in 100 years. So the scale here is incredibly exciting, but of course it also means it's incredibly challenging. You're quite right to point to infrastructure. Infrastructure, I think, we start from immense strengths in that there are $20 billion worth of infrastructure investment going into the precinct. That's from both Commonwealth and state governments. Of course, the Western Sydney International Airport is the anchor of that, but the state government is investing heavily in metro rail for the precinct, the new M12, considerable investment in roads within the precinct, and of course the announcement in May of Tom Gellibrand and Infrastructure New South Wales' role to make sure the coordination is right, which was a really good decision because there are clearly problems in there, and Tom and the team are doing a great job of sorting that out. So look, that's an amazing strength. You can't drop $20 billion into a part of a city and not have that shape economic outcomes for the future. So that will have an enormous impact. But that investment does need to keep going, and it's part of that is rail, part of that is roads. We heard earlier today around the business cases being done for the extension of rail. The dialogue's been in the papers today, championing the cause for that, which we welcome. So it's important that that investment does continue, but we have an enormous strength which will absolutely transform outcomes, particularly when that airport switches on.
North Parramatta, it's not 11,000 hectares, but it's certainly nothing to sneeze at. What do the opportunities look like for that precinct as Bradfield's much older, but to use your words, much littler sister?
Yeah, I did make that joke when I met Ken the other day, and I said Bradfield's the big brother, Parramatta North is the little sister. Scale is important. At Parramatta North, we've got 42 hectares of underutilised government state land, and the opportunity there is to really provide the social and cultural infrastructure that's going to connect to the Westmead Health and Innovation District. But like the Mayor said, how does that actually support Parramatta CBD into the future and what that looks like in 2050? So we've got a light rail coming through, and once the light rail operates, we've also got a precinct today that's alive. So lots of people I know in this room have worked on Parramatta North over the last probably 20 years, but today we've got a precinct that's alive. Council had Foundation Day there a couple of weeks ago, and the community coming through that and living and experiencing it. So how do we allow people to enjoy those communities and use the active transport opportunities and essentially for nurses to work near the hospital? As simple as that.
Thank you. Look, I deliberately started with Ken and V because, let's be honest, I want to say it's been a tough few weeks, but I kind of just think it's just been tough generally for urban amenity. So I'm going to go to you, Roch, and I'm going to try to keep it positive because I'm glass half full. We can get to some of the harder stuff a bit later. But look, if it's not developer contributions and IPART submissions, it's Sydney Waters to blame for the mosquito plague in Liverpool, and it's just kind of one thing after another. So let's take the heat out. Let's kind of talk Bondi vibes. So how can Sydney Water, or how is Sydney Water helping councils establish more swimmable sites in the rivers, creeks, lakes, and harbour sites of Greater Sydney that were previously unswimmable? And what lifestyle opportunities, like Urban Plunge, what do they offer for the people of Greater Western Sydney?
Well, there's a lot of things in water. We always talk about different sort of waters. The reality is that there's only one water. And part of this water is exactly about what you said, which is public amenity in the city. And you think about city without drinking water and without wastewater services, it just doesn't work. But actually a city that doesn't have water in parks and gardens and swimming sites and just cooling the city with enough water to water the trees, having all sorts of places where you can spend good time with friends and families, it just doesn't work as well. So that's definitely also the part of what Sydney Water does. We've got Urban Plunge, which is a program where we're supporting councils to develop swimming sites, and it's through a number of different services, from the water analysis, obviously, but also going through the planning process and organizing the site. So that's definitely something we're very invested in to make sure that we've got swim sites not only in the east part of the city, but also in the west part of the city. And some very good success have happened, Canada Bay and a number of places where it's been absolutely fantastic. Now, there is also a big part for water to play in the rest of the city and making sure that we've got parks and gardens that are green all the time, even if there is a drought. Places where you've got trees in the street and in the landscape so that you can cool the temperature. We've been doing a lot of work with, and I'm just wanted to mention the Western Sydney Airport. So we had discussion with the Western Sydney Airport, and our proposal is actually, with greening the airport, we can lower the temperature of the airport precinct by something between 3 and 4 degrees. And that's important not only in terms of electricity consumption for air conditioning, but that's also important for airplanes and especially fuel consumptions. And you may have seen situations, especially in the US, where planes are landed because they cannot take off because the temperature is too high. And that happens when you don't manage temperature in a city. So that's one of the many power of water, greening the city, greening the airport, so that even if we've got another 45 degrees in the future, or maybe more, then airports can still function and planes can take off.
Thank you. I am going to go to Slido in a minute, but I did want to switch to the person responsible for some 29,000 jobs and for actually joining the dots, connecting the Aerotropolis to Parramatta North, to the swimmable sites, from my house to your house, Josh Murray. Josh, we quickly forget the success stories about when transport actually works. And we just hear about the doom and gloom, delays, costs, etc. Kirsten spoke to us last night about transport projects not being transport projects, but actually city projects and city shaping projects. Before we get to some of the harder stuff, can you give us some examples where transport has partnered with other government agencies, as well as the private sector, to deliver really great outcomes for communities?
Yeah, maybe we go back to the mosquitoes question.
Yeah, I know.
That was easier.
I know.
No, thank you for the question, and good morning, everyone. Look, I think that is absolutely the template that we are trying to really rely on going forward. And what I've seen and been able to experience in recent times, particularly working with Kirsten, is that vision around how we bring transport assets together with place assets, and it's one thought process. And I'd absolutely say that in the past, government agencies weren't ever really commended for getting out of their swim lane. It was very much, do what you do and try and do that to the best of your ability, but don't get involved in other people's homework. What we're trying to do through the housing focus, and what we're trying to do in particular at Transport, is say, it's not about growing the network. It's not about making it move faster and making its tentacles reach further, but it's about what are we doing to infill that network so it's high quality options for our passengers. And that really is our driving focus throughout all of our changes that we're making at Transport, to make sure that is what the thinking results in. Not just about growth, not just about pace, but really what is the quality outcome we're getting to. And I've been talking to people here at Boomtown about some of those experiences. You walk out of the heavy rail station there at Parramatta, you'll look down to where the metro site is going to be. You've got all other transport modes within a short walk and a short easy walk to get to. If we can keep that level of thinking as a bit of a template, Westmead will be the same. When we get light rail open, to mention the elephant in the room sometimes, but we are just around the corner from great news in that part of the world. And you think about what Westmead will look like at that corner. You'll have the heavy rail, the light rail, the metro, and you'll have a completely different dynamic for the community around those sites. And they're just business and investment related before we even get to recreation.
I'm glad you mentioned Parramatta Light Rail, so I can at least say you said it, not me. But look, I guess a question inspired by FOMO, or at least the MO of FOMO, so the missing out piece. Josh, what's your message to communities that still remain disconnected, unmetrified, outside of the huge investment the government's bringing to establish these connections?
Yeah, I think that may be one of the dangers of the current renaissance around public transport that Metro has really triggered, and people have had their imaginations captured by experimenting. More than 10 million people have used the Metro and continue to just adopt it in huge numbers. What we've found through that experiment, if you like, is that people have changed their travel patterns willingly. And that's never been part of Sydney's dynamic. That has not been a hobby of Sydney-siders when they're travelling. It's been very much up until now, this is my bus, it takes me to here, that's my option. So I think if even in those communities that are looking at different styles of investment, we can start to get that level of thinking about what are some of the alternative routes, what are some of the services that will come in. And again, back to what we're trying to do in transport is, it's not always about investment, but it does have to be about optionality for people. I had correspondence come across my desk just this week that called out a woman who wrote in and said her bus service had changed. The service dropped out, which meant it was a 40-minute wait between the two bus services. That didn't suit her to get to work. her only option in Greater Western Sydney was an Uber, and economically completely unviable. And this was a distressing letter to read. They're the elements that with our medium-term bus plan, we have to be focusing in on those areas that need that everyday heavy lifting uplift to get people where they need to go so they can connect in with whatever mass transit mode they need.
Yeah, when it goes wrong, which is kind of a good segue to you, Ken. You have an opportunity for it not to go wrong, and you've got a really captive audience here. So ask for what you need. What do you need from these guys? What do you need from the private sector to ensure the success of Bradfield and the greater Aerotropolis?
Well, we need the private sector's investment and innovation and faith in what we're creating at Bradfield. In Bradfield, we're shifting very strongly from a planning phase to a strong implementation phase, and that means all that work has been done over many, many years by governments and by the authority to come to fruition. You know, we've got a first building which won the award last night, most innovative project, which will be open early in the new year. It's just been completed. That it houses an economic development strategy for the region targeted at advanced manufacturing, accelerating innovation in an important employment sector for Sydney. We have a super lot, which 4.8 hectares of mixed use, which we're developing, where we're down a pathway to secure a private sector development partner. That will just be the first of many opportunities to come within Bradfield, and what we will be showcasing next year sometime is what those opportunities are, how private sector investors and developers and companies that want to be part of this future at Bradfield, how they can get involved, their pathways to investing onto the ground. So really, it's time to get excited. It's time for businesses to really seriously look at the opportunities at Bradfield, which will be opening up over the next few years. Businesses will have that pathway. You know, they've heard a lot about it. An airport will be open, metro stations will be open, freeways will be finished, and Bradfield will be open and keen to get people's business in.
There you go, an open invitation to hit Ken up after this panel. I've got a lot of likes for a couple of these questions, so I think it only fair to ask. Maybe one for you, Roch, although it is directed to yourself and Josh. What is Transport and Sydney Water doing to assist enabling the potential of 120,000 dwellings in Macarthur?
Well, look, there is a lot in terms of planning for this region. So we're talking about huge investment in this part of the Greater Sydney area. Simply for water and wastewater services, we're talking about between 3 and 4 billion of investment in this part of Sydney. So this is a significant investment. This is not a part of Sydney that is well serviced today, and this is also a place where, because of the geography and the number of very pristine areas that is difficult to service. But we've got in our plan, we've got a large advanced water recycling centre that is planned to be built. And then all the infrastructure that goes with it. And it's important to look at the way we've done this part of Sydney in the past and consider the fact that it's not the way we're going to do it in the future. So when you look at this part of Sydney, most of the water is coming from the south and most of the wastewater is going to the east. That's not going to work in the future. So that's why we're turning our mind to something which is completely different, to have actually local services in terms of water and wastewater. So the planning is currently ongoing, and there's also some very active projects where construction is already ongoing.
Okay. I said I wasn't going to talk about Troika on this stage because I feel like if there was a word cloud, that would be like the biggest word over the last 2 sessions, but this question has quite a few likes. Planning always seems to blame transport and water for delays in housing delivery. Will the new Troika solve these concurrent issues within state government? Maybe one for you, Josh.
Yeah, thanks. I also noted the resurgence of the word troika in all of this coverage, and I have been quoting it around the halls when I see Kirsten or Simon Draper or others. They don't appreciate it, just for the record. Look, I just want to say, people have also said to me, oh, well, should transport be on there? But it's not about some of those decisions. Transport is absolutely in that decision making. We have the Housing Committee of Cabinet where we are specifically focusing in on how we make sure that the TODs, first step, but also all the other decisions that are linked into that are really prioritised, and that transport is not lagging, as may have been criticism in the past, and in fact that we are pushing ahead with our own plans that we can feed into this mix and make work. If I look at what we've done through even the government's audit of property, transport is a massive landholder, and it's true that the temptation within operational transport is hold on to everything until the very last minute because you never know what you might need. We have had to reverse that thinking. We've had to say there is real benefit now to unlocking some of these properties. So let's be really serious about the operationally vital elements, and let's be a little bit more risk sensitive and maybe a bit more broad-minded about what we could do with planning, with Landcom, with Homes New South Wales, with social housing, in that we could make something that really makes a difference.
Yeah, and I think that's key. Collaboration does make all the difference, which, V, I'm going to throw to you in terms of collaborating and partnering. What does partnering with government and stakeholders to deliver precincts that help communities thrive look like?
Look, I'm all about co-creation and cross-collaboration. So listening to Josh say, how do New South Wales agencies get out of their swim lane? Parramatta North is a prime example of where we've taken a one Waratah approach, which we brought everybody along the journey. So we understand that we must work with health, we work with transport, we work with Create New South Wales, as well as the Museums of History New South Wales. So we're a majority landowner, Property and Development New South Wales, but we also see the big picture that says how do all these component parts come into one program? And then we lift that up into a vision that says to the New South Wales government, this is how you deliver your strategic policies, and this is how Parramatta North, which is a significant infill site, can deliver that with city water.
Thank you. Another question from Slido on the top of the list. Will the government gazette the Outer Sydney Orbital? When can residents expect certainty on the corridor? Maybe that's you, Josh.
Well, I know the roads minister is on the agenda fairly shortly, so I just better be. I better not steal any thunder ahead of that, and I won't comment particularly on that question, except to say that we have a number of planning elements that reset our future focus that will be coming out to market in the, say, first quarter of next year. I think there is a real focus, whether it's the previous question about Macarthur unlocking, in particular some of the roads challenges there that we have designated through the Urban Roads Fund, the Western Sydney Freight Line, and then the metro connections that Ken has talked about in particular. We have to make sure that all of these are sequenced. The Premier said last night he can't fund everything all at once. But having said that, even with some changes to the capital program, we are absolutely still spending at well over the last 10-year average, and we have to have industry be able to come along and see what those priorities are. So we're very committed to making sure that people see the sequencing laid out more clearly.
That's a very nice answer. Maybe we can expand on that a little bit further in the day. Okay, a final question from Slido, and then one last one from me to you all to wrap it up. Let's go with maybe one for you, Roch. At what stage will you stop delivering yesterday's infrastructure for tomorrow's communities? So much theory for a future city, but not a lot of action yet. And maybe, Ken, you can back end that question.
Yeah, look, there is a lot of infrastructure being delivered in Sydney. I'll just talk about numbers. So 5 years ago, we were delivering about 500 million a year of infrastructure in Sydney. Last financial year, we delivered 2 billion of infrastructure in the city. So there's definitely been a massive increase in delivery of infrastructure, and that continues. So we have recently submitted to the economic regulator a submission for the next 5 years, and just to keep it very simple, the way Sydney Water works, all the money that we've got for investment or operation of the business is coming from our customers. So every 5 years, we go to the economic regulator and we say, this is the investment program for the next 5 years. And this is also the money that we need to run the water and wastewater services to our 5.4 million people every day, so that they can drink this good water and flush their toilets without any issue. And the regulator comes back and say, well, okay, you can have this from your customers. In the program that we've submitted to IPART in September, we've got investment of 16.6 billion in the next 5 years. Mm-hmm. So we're not talking only about plan, we're talking about a huge increase in the last 5 years, and we're talking also about something that is going to increase in the future. So the movement is ongoing, this is happening, and it's going to continue to happen and to grow.
Thank you.
Well, I think the way your question relates to us is really how are the collective we able to convert massive infrastructure investment into a step change in the economy of Western Sydney. And I think, we've got that infrastructure investment coming in, we've got the coordination being stepped up. Yes, we still need more investment in new projects, but we need to remember what this is all about. This is about bringing jobs and high-order jobs into a part of Sydney that hasn't had enough jobs. It's about bringing jobs into a part of Sydney which is growing extraordinarily fast and will be, Southwest Sydney will be the major lateral expansion for housing in Sydney. And it's about doing more than turning on an airport. It's making sure that you're leveraging that airport to maximise the economic outcomes around that. So I think that's the task for us at the authority. I think it's the task across government, and listening to Minister McAllister before, and we're pleased to have her at Bradfield quite early in her term, and she really gets the need to leverage what's going in to get those economic and social outcomes for Western Sydney.
Thank you. And in closing, a question for you each, perhaps starting with you, Roch, and moving down to V. It's the same question. In each of your respective roles, what upcoming piece of kit or what initiative kind of excites you the most, and why? And feel free to say something that no one knows anything about yet, because we love announceables here.
Okay, I'll probably go with the pace of transformation that's happening in Sydney. So there is a lot happening, and that's absolutely fantastic to see it happening. And Western Sydney is a great example of that.
I'm going to take the question literally and think about kit. And actually Parramatta has been a great testing ground for this, but we actually have rolling out right now new trains, new buses, zero-emission buses, and new ferries, and of course light rail. So they are bits of kit that I think will capture people's imaginations. They'll get on them, they'll feel the comfort, they'll feel the experience, just like they have with Metro, and I think that will encourage more people to buy into public transport.
It's a pretty impressive piece of kit, let's be honest.
Mine's less kit and more the fact that we're off and running. The planning's over, we're getting it done. This is going to be such an exciting time. An airport opening, metro lines opening, Bradfield coming out of the ground. Already $9.8 billion of private sector investment in the Aerotropolis region going through the planning system. Just to start, it's tremendously exciting.
I'd like to see people fly into Bradfield Airport, jump on the West Metro, get off at Parramatta CBD, jump on the light rail and then head to Parramatta North. And when you head to Parramatta North, you're going to stay in Western Sydney and Parramatta for a couple days. You're going to visit the powerhouse, you're going to go to Westmead Hospital, and you're going to have a good time in Western Sydney.
Very cool. Thank you. Please join me in thanking our panellists.